Hello, welcome to SCLC Today, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to extend our condolences and our sympathy to the King family. As many of you probably know, maybe a few not aware of the fact that Dr. Christine King Farris made her transition a few days ago. And we just want the family to know that we extend our deepest sympathy. Dr. Christine King Farris was a leader in her own right. And she will be funeralized this Sunday at Ebenezer Baptist Church. And I'm just honored to say that I was able to work with her along with the King Center under the leadership of none other than Elder Bernice King, Dr. Bernice King, and the entire family. Martin Luther King III and I worked very close together, and I'm just honored that I can say that the spirit of Dr. King and SCLC and the King Center is very relatively impact upon the transition and the passing of Dr. Christine King Farris. And we want the world to know, not only was she Dr. King's sister, she was a great professor at Spelman College. And from my understanding, and I think I'm correct, she worked there as a professor longer than any other institutional leader in the profession of teaching at Spelman College. And we just want to say, job well done, well done. And we send out and extend all of our love to the Farris and the King family. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we want to talk about the fact that we are in a society that really must get the understanding and get the grips on the fact that we as Americans can no longer have the hate mechanism that's in many of our diversity of ethnicity on all sides. It's a full circle of ethnicity. You're talking about Caucasian, you're talking about the Mongoloid, you're talking about the Negroid, Australoid. Now you're talking about the Pacific of indigenous people in terms of who we are. But guess what? We all came out of Africa. So when you say African Americans, pretty much that's all of us. So how can we be so divisive when we all came from Africa? Adam and Eve, don't forget. Eve is the mother of all of us, and Adam the father. But we all originated from Africa. So how can we be so hateful toward one another? It's because we have not been healed from the transatlantic African slave trade. We have not been healed. And since we're talking about the transatlantic African slave trade, let's talk about race. When you speak of race itself, what the first thing comes to your mind? Race is a competition. It's competition. You prepare for a race, motor car race, track and field race, race to the finish line, marathons, whatever the race may be. Racing to win the baseball game, the football game, to outscore your competition. But before you get into the race of scoring, you have to be prepared. Now, how can you go to a football game and playing the other team without any equipment, or a baseball game without gloves and helmet to protect you in case the ball hits you, even on your shins, your knee, or any part of your body. Even the baseball hitters are preparing themselves, even in the outfield and infield. But when it comes to human beings and individuals, we think they shouldn't be prepared. And the first way to be prepared is to know where you come from, know your history. How can America honestly sit around and say, we fear God, in God we trust, and don't want you to know your history? It's because of the guilt of people who thinking that they are responsible for African Americans, people of the Negroid race. You got 5 or 6 different categories of the race. Do I have to call it out again? Caucasoid, Negroid, Mongoloid, Australoid, and the Pacific island of people, they have been included now. When you say Australoid, you're talking about down under, around Australia and Auckland, New Zealand. So you're talking about the whole world. But we all came from Africa. We are brothers and sisters. So what I'm saying is that it's nothing to be ashamed of that we came out of slavery or that we had slave masters. What is an abomination and shameful and disgrace to all of this is that we don't recognize it. I'm going somewhere with this. That we don't recognize it. That's an abomination or disgrace upon the human race. You can't hide the fact of history. That's what the Bible is all about. The historicity of God himself and the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. You can't get around that. Church, people, the industry, corporate America, corporate world, doing business. I don't care what the ethnicity or the religious makeup of you in terms of who you are, the religiosity of individuals. You cannot get around the fact that we all must be healed. And speaking of being healed, the kingdom philosophy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is the beginning. And it starts with Dr. Bernard Lafayette, who is our chairman of the board, and one of the expertise, if not the one and only profound, renowned expertise in the training of the kingdom philosophy. It's Dr. Martin Luther King himself in terms of how he survived. That's what Dr. Lafayette teaches, how he survived the turmoil, the conflicts, the fight back of the hatefulness that he encountered. This must be taught. And he did not throw a blow. The only time that Dr. King has been recorded in crime in history is in Marks, Mississippi, on Cotton Street, when he saw the impoverishment of people, young girls and young boys, families, young men, middle-aged women, all people of color, impoverished in Marks, Mississippi. That's when Dr. King cried and fell on his knees in public. And many people don't know about Marks, Mississippi. That's when he had a conversation with God and said, where do we go from here? The Poor People Campaign. That's where the Poor People Campaign evolved out of Marks, Mississippi. And ladies and gentlemen, what happened in Marks, Mississippi in 1968 with the impoverishment is still the ramification of how people living in this country, being poor, being forgotten, being overlooked, being disrespected, not being respected as a human being, as a leader, no industries, no jobs. When it rained, there was no sewage infrastructure. People had to get around in canoes and boats, and the young children with swollen bellies. Ladies and gentlemen, we must realize that it's all about being left out of the economic base of this country. African Americans, one report, and I'm finished, one report says African Americans own only 1% of the wealth in this country. Another report said we only have 1/2 or 1% of the wealth in this country. Yes, Dr. King talked about reparation and the redistribution of the wealth. We'll talk more about this next week, because love is what love does, and I love you. God bless you.